Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Two Oceans Half Marathon podcast. Really excited to be here. We're 9 weeks out, so we are getting into it step by step. Excuse the pun, which is exciting. And as always, I have my colleague and friend Dev here with me. Dev, fun fact, sorry, before Dev says hello, did you know that Dev, while he's got a lot of expertise in running, strength and conditioning, running and cycling coaching, he also was the strength and conditioning specialist or sports scientist for the ice hockey team, the national South African ice hockey team. I didn't even know we had an ice hockey team, Dev, until you took on that role. So, yes, how are you, Dev? Tell us a bit about that quickly.
Yeah, very well, thanks. Excited to be here again, really getting stuck into this now. Had some really good feedback from the first couple of podcasts. That the ice hockey thing, it was one of those things that kind of fell into my lap when I was working at the High Performance Center at that stage. And it was something that wasn't really new to me. And I mean, you even paused a little bit there. Ice hockey, South Africa, like who would have thought?
Exactly.
But yeah, we've got a national team. I traveled to a couple of sort of lower division world champs with the team, and actually a really cool setup to be part of. While it isn't a big sport in South Africa, it's definitely something that's growing. They've got some really cool junior programs coming up, and was really nice to actually work in something completely different. Again, just kind of broadening that toolbox, and being exposed to some of the other proper teams that are out there and sort of just getting that vibe. Really, really cool experience.
Awesome. Dev, can you ice skate?
No, it was always one of the things where in the tournament itself, I kind of wore a couple of hats. I was kind of the team medic as well as the sports scientist and everything. So if there was an injury on the ice, it would always be a break in play, and I would have two guys on either side of me sort of shuffling me onto the ice. So they'd skate me on, I'd do my work, and then skate me back off. So no, it was one of those things that was always I was really hoping no one got injured, or there was no need for me to actually get back on the
or
ice.
that you didn't, or that someone didn't have to come and get you off the ice. But
Yeah.
well, let's start talking about something that feels a little bit more natural, and specifically, I guess, to South Africans, and obviously the Two Oceans half coming up. We're 9 weeks out. Where should you be, or where are we now? What should you be focusing on at this point in your training?
Yeah, so we are well into our first block of training. If you remember from previous podcasts, we've spoken about sort of breaking that up into those 4-week cycles. And we're well into our first block now, kind of still building the base, so building up our volume a little bit, and building maybe a little bit more of the lower aerobic type of base when we're talking about that. Being 3 weeks technically into the plan, or into our 12-week block, we are now really starting to gradually pick up the volume. And it is important that it is that gradual increase in volume, depending on the plan that you're at. So depending on the level of runner, there might be some intervals thrown in already. So we definitely have got some intensity, if you'd like to put it that way, but still largely focused on that aerobic base and just building the volume, getting ourselves into the meat of things. There's still lots to come.
Yeah, David. And on that point, actually, we've had a few people email in or comment saying, they're feeling really tired. They might have had a pretty lazy December, and now they've been going, for the first sort of 3 weeks, and they're feeling really tired. Is that normal?
It is. So again, like I said, we are building volume. Hopefully you haven't come into building too much volume too quickly. Being tired at this stage is kind of normal, but it's definitely not something we're expecting you to be all the time. So a lot of sort of distance runners, we've got this in our mind where, I'm training hard, I'm putting in volumes, I'm just constantly fatigued, and that's how life is. It shouldn't be like that. If we're running the right intensities, our easy runs easy enough, we're focusing on the recovery between those training sessions, we should be feeling that we're picking up volume. We should be feeling a little bit tired from time to time, but it shouldn't be something every morning that you're waking up and you're going, I don't know how I'm going to get into the next training session. The timing also tends to work pretty well now. We are approaching a recovery week, and those recovery weeks always seem to come at the right time, just when the body's saying, hello, just remember I'm hurting here a little bit. boom, there's a recovery week, and that's why we structure the plans the way we do. We will obviously in the next episode be going into proper recovery, what we should be focusing on. So make sure you do tune in for that and how to approach those recovery weeks. But I think for now, we shouldn't, I speak about building up volume. We shouldn't really be focusing on too much volume right now. The early stages of the plan, I really want you focusing on your consistency. For now, the consistency of training far outweighs you trying to cram massive amounts of volume in. We've still got lots of time in this training block. The meat of the training, as I mentioned, is still to come. We've still got 8+ weeks, or my maths, we in 9 weeks still to go. So we are going to be building volume. We're going to continue building volume, and you shouldn't be at the stage where you're trying to do those long runs or massively long runs now already. Consistency, focusing on just trying to get session after session. We talk about ticking those boxes green, making sure that you're getting it all done. And don't be silly. You need to follow your plan. You need to listen to your body along the way. The structure's there. Follow the structure and don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah, excellent. Dev, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was running in a race this last weekend. I was doing part of my long run in that race. I wasn't racing the race. And obviously, you just pick up on people running around you talking, and I overheard so many people talking about, well, this is what they're racing or training for, and that they're really, they're out doing these 2.5, massively long runs, and they also equally, maybe going to go and race, or they're running quite hard. And, you spoke about recovery. So, yeah, what's your comments on this? How do you balance that mileage or volume and recovery in this phase?
Yeah, I think it's the balance is really critical. Like I said, we are trying to build volume. We don't want to be doing it too quickly, but it still really is, like I said, I don't want you tired all the time. So your recovery has to be a priority. We shouldn't be jumping into these big volumes of training at the moment. Depending on where you're at, and if I remember correctly, we did speak about it prior, you shouldn't be doing a half marathon race every weekend when you're working towards a half marathon, especially if it's your first half marathon that you're building towards. So we really shouldn't be focusing on those ultra long runs at the moment. For now, the consistency is key, gradually building up week in and week out. I'm happy for you to maybe enter the odd race. You mentioned you did a race the last weekend as a training run. That's the critical part here. Doing these 10K races, for example, as training runs, so you don't have to think about finding routes and you don't have to think about water points and that, but it still needs to be in line with what your training plan says. So you definitely shouldn't be doing a 2-hour 40 run, for example, in a half marathon, if that's how long it takes you to do. Even if it is an easy run, It shouldn't be taking you 2 hours 40 if your training plan says you should be doing 1:30 today. So that's really important, because again, I talk about that gradual build up in volume. And if we're going, for example, sort of 15-minute increments every week, or 10-minute increments in those long runs every week, if last week was an 1:30 run, and now this week you're going to go and enter a race that's going to take you 2.5 hours. Now your increment in that long run, you haven't changed anything else in the week. The week's still a cumulative volume, but now that long run is an extra hour in one sitting. So that's really going to affect it has this knock-on effect in your recovery later on, and that's really it's going to affect the quality of your training going forward.
Yeah, definitely. And Dev, just want to throw this in, because we do get this question often. Before, I had another question around where we, sort of where our long run should be. But what if someone goes out and runs a 10K at the moment, and they actually land up pushing a bit? What should they do? I mean, I know that happens. And I mean, I'm competitive. I know how that often happens. How do they adjust their week? If they ran it quite hard on the Saturday and they've got a couple of days after, how do they adjust that?
Yeah, so I would actually consider taking maybe even a day off immediately after that. It's going to be, again, dependent on the level of runner you are. I mean, we talk and we prescribe most of our training, or all of our training, on time-based. So if you are pushing that and you're a 10K runner and you're running a 45-minute 10K, for example, as much as it's a hard run, it's a 45-minute run. So you can bounce back a little bit quicker than someone who maybe takes 1 hour and 20 minutes to run a 10K. But the fact of the matter still is you've pushed yourself a little bit hard. You weren't scheduled to push yourself hard. So like I said, you've probably built up quite a bit of volume in the week leading up to it. So I would take a day off afterwards, maybe some very light active recovery, and then just ease yourself back into training and just make sensible adjustments to the week still to come.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. And then you mentioned around, you threw in the words 2-hour 40 run as a long run. I mean, I know we'll get to this closer to the time where we're doing those big distances, but should we be doing those kinds of long runs at the moment? Where should we sort of be?
If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsay and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, definitely not at this stage of your training. We 3 weeks into the training plan, regardless of whether you had that lazy December or you have been consistently training going through, at this phase of your training, you definitely shouldn't be doing anything near 2 hours 30 or 2-hour 40 long runs. What I would suggest doing is, like I said, just the more gradual build-up, so small increments in those long runs. I keep talking about this accumulative volume, and that's really critical. A lot of people panic and they think, well, I need to be cramming volume in now. I'm only 9 weeks out. They're listening to their friends, and their friends are all doing so many different things. You talk about the amount of people on the race that have all got different ideas of doing so many races. Don't panic. You've got a plan. You've got a roadmap to get you there. That's why we're here, and we're here to help you through that along the way. So you don't need to be getting to the meat and the absolute critical points. That we should probably only peaking our long run, I would probably say about 5 weeks, maybe 4 weeks out from race day is where we're really going to be peaking those long runs. So I talk about that balance of recovery. I talk about not getting too much in. Yes, we might be feeling a little bit tired, but it really is, I sound like a broken record here, listening to your body. I'm not saying you need to chicken out of training sessions. So I'm not saying you wake up and you're feeling tired and you know what, I'm not training now for 2 or 3 days because I'm absolutely feeling tired. You don't have to chicken out. We are in that sort of stage where we are doing a progressive overload. So we are pushing the envelope a little bit. The recovery is still really important. But by listening to your body, you might just think, well, my leg's a little bit sore today and I might have had a hill repeat session scheduled. Let me rather do a 45-minute easy run. Still getting time on the legs, still getting a training run in, but that way your body's just recovering a little bit quicker, and that interval session might be able to shift to, you might be able to either swap it out later in the week, or again, if the body's still taking a little bit longer to recover, then think, okay, I need to just continue this week with easy runs. We'll worry about getting back into the intensity next week. So that's what I mean by listen to the body. Don't just chicken out of everything and say, today I'm tired and I'm not running anymore.
Yeah. And Dev, and thoughts on cross training in those instances?
Yeah. So great question. Big fan of it. And it actually, so when we talk about cross training, let me just quickly allude to that first. So cross training, I'm talking about cycling, swimming, maybe on the rowing machine, maybe the elliptical. The idea of the cross training is to just take a lot of that impact and the pounding off the legs that running has, running being that repetitive motion. So I talk about changing an intensity session maybe to an easy run. You could even take that another step further and jump on a stationary bike or go for a swim. You're still doing a training session. There's still cardiovascular benefits to that training session. However, you're not hammering the legs as much as you would if you were running. So we're getting a little bit time, or we're getting some time to recover a little bit quicker on those legs to get back to the following training session. So yeah, cross training is fantastic. I love it. And it is something we should consider if we have access to it, to throwing it into the plan.
Yeah, I love it too. And but I always say this, and I know people are going to hate me for saying it. I would not suggest that you put cross training in your plan at the expense of strength training. And that is essentially where I want to go next, because we had a couple of comments and emails come in of people going, because we really spoke about strength training in a lot of depth in I think it was episode 1. So please go back and have a listen to that. And a couple of people came back and went, okay, well, I've never really done any strength work. Is it too late for me to now start?
Yeah, so it's never too late to start, and especially at this phase of your training plan. We're still early days in the training plan. If you haven't done it, get started. Now is the time to get started. Start like you're running. We talk about a gradual build up and getting into it easy. Same applies to the strength training. Don't just dive into it thinking you've seen some YouTube videos of special forces training session, so now you're going to do 1,000 burpees in the session. Please don't try and do that. That's not what I mean by it. But start for where you are. Make sure, even if that's body weight work, again, we're talking about that resistance training, so pushing your body against some form of resistance. If you're new to strength training, the body weight work works really well. And then from there, gradually build that up through the process. So as much as your training plan is building up, you should be doing the same with the strength work, maybe adding a little bit more resistance bands, some weights into the process, and gradually building for your level and where you're at. We will cut back on the strength much later on in the plan. So when we start talking later around tapering weeks and those sort of things, we'll get to those specifics and we obviously take it out. But again, I'm going to kind of hammer on that listen to your body point, where if you are new to strength and you're starting it out and the strength is hurting you a little bit and you're finding that you're really sore for the next training session, cut back ever so slightly on maybe sets and reps, maybe resistance. So you maybe started out a little bit too hard, go back to body weight work and just get that in. Remember, the strength training has to complement your running. So you say you don't want cross training at the expense of a strength session. I also would like, some days I'm happy for you to cut out a run if you need to make sure that you're not getting rid of a strength session. So that is also something that you need to consider. But yeah, the strength training, never too late. Get stuck in there. Now's the time to be hammering home on that. It's really, really critical for this phase of the training plan.
Yeah, brilliant, Dev. And I'm so glad you mentioned that YouTube military kind of training thing, because one of the things I love about what we do here at Coach Parry is our strength sessions are set specifically for running, right? Yes, of course, we people want to do some strength work for other aesthetic purposes, but the strength training that we've put in place is, as you said, there to complement your running, right? So, things like burpees, and I saw someone told me the other day that they were doing like handstand push-ups and burpees in a session. And, I'm just like, is that really relevant? Can you give us some examples of what we should be doing in these sessions to help us with performance and injury prevention?
Yeah, so really good exercises. And this, again, goes across the spectrum from body weight all the way up to Olympic bars and those sort of things. Squats are really important. Very good exercises for us to complement our running. Things like lunges. Lunges, I would always say be a little bit more cautious around it. Again, if you're starting out, static lunges work very well. You can then progress to doing forward lunges, reverse lunges, lateral lunges, whatever. But squats, lunges, step ups. So stepping up onto a box. I'm not saying box jumps, step ups. So either onto a chair or a small step in a box. Step downs work really well, especially with some of the route where you might be running downhill. That eccentric loading is quite critical. Calf raises, a couple of foot exercises. And then as much as we're runners and we think we need to be doing everything around the legs, core work is really important. Lower back work is really important. Very often people are picking up those little nagging injuries around Achilles and calves. And more often than not, that's higher up in that posterior chain. So lower back, glutes, those sort of things are what could be triggering a calf issue from time to time. So lower back, core work, upper body work. We run, but we still need good upper body posture as well, shoulder mobility, that kind of work. So those are critical exercises from a strength point of view, and then not to neglect mobility work itself. So that's really key. So hip mobility, leg swings, sort of dropping knees side to side. You really want to make sure that those hips are nice and loose, because that also makes you a little bit more efficient when it comes to your stride pattern and your running gait.
Excellent. Oh, so much value in that, guys. If I were you, I'd go back and just replay that on not on 2 times speed. Let's put it back onto 1 time speed so you can make a couple of notes. But yes, definitely not too late to start, and definitely not the time to be panicking about your volume and your mileage, and just really ensuring that we are recovering and listening to our bodies. Dev, thank you so much for your time. Guys, tune in again next week. We are going to be on episode 4, and it is likely going to be a recovery week. It is a recovery week if you're following one of our Coach Perry plans, and we're going to dive into everything to do with recovery, what you should be doing, what it means, all the different aspects that can really help you recover well. So yeah, tune in then. See you guys all next week. Thanks, Dev.
Cheers, everyone.